Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm doing a fun little challenge. So I'm doing something called the Alphabet Bookshelf Challenge, in which I am going to go through every letter of the alphabet and see if I can find a book that starts with that letter. I probably will have some caveats here. So first of all, I am allowing myself, if I can't find a single book title that starts with that letter, I am allowed to use an author, but I don't want to start with the author because I feel like that's too easy, especially because I have all of my books alphabetized by author's last name. So it makes it too easy to find them anyway. But I also know that there will be some letters that are hard to find, like Q and like X and like Z. So those kinds of letters, I feel like I should be able to include them if they're in the title at all, if I can't find a book that starts with those letters. So might be fudging a little bit if I can't find them. I also am not allowing any of the books that I choose to begin with like an article like A or the, like I'm not going to choose A Tree Grows in Brooklyn for the letter A or The Fellowship of the Ring for T. So I'm not going to do that. But other than that, I think those are the only caveats. So we're going to start with the letter A and see if I can find a book. Okay, that wasn't too hard. Aurora Floyd by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. Haven't read this. Haven't read any Braddon, but I am going to be reading Lady Audley's Secret in Victober. So we'll be reading something from her soon, but I know she writes more like mysterious, sensationalist type of Victorian novels. B was harder than I anticipated, but we're going with The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery, which if you can tell by the tabs, I have read this one. C was an easy one. It stood out to me immediately because it's such a large book. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. If you are intimidated by big classics, I feel like this one is fairly accessible compared to some of the other kind of like big scary classics. Okay, for D, we're doing Daniel Deronda by George Eliot, which is my favorite George Eliot. I almost feel like when you're playing categories and it asks for something and you get the double letters, that double points, like it's Daniel Deronda, 2 Ds. I feel like, I don't know. For E, we have another name title, Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. I've also read this one. So I'm trying really hard not to duplicate authors. I didn't say that at the beginning, but immediately I'm like, oh, the Emily books from L.M. Montgomery. But I've already chosen an L.M. Montgomery, so I'm going to try not to choose another one if I can help it. For F, From the Earth to the Moon by Jules Verne. Haven't read this one actually. It's just a tiny little sci-fi, less than 200 pages about, outer space. And I do want to read this one because I think it would be fun. We're going with the middle grade for G, The Goggin and the Boy. It's by Lloyd Alexander. I think the Goggin is supposed to be like the Gorgon, but it's like his aunt, I think. I just read my first Lloyd Alexander book during middle grade March. So I have tons more to choose from that I have picked up. And so this is one of them, but it's not part of like the series with like the Book of Three. What is that called? The Prydain Chronicles or something like that. It's not part of that. So I'm prioritizing reading The Black Cauldron, I think, before I go on to some of his other books. For H, we're going Russian, A Hero of Our Time by Mikhail Lermontov. Haven't read this one yet. We almost read it, I think, when we did like a read-along for Project Gutenberg a few years ago. I think this was like one of the options, but we didn't end up reading it. It's less than 200 pages, so I really need to pick this one up soon. For I, In This House of Breed by Rumer Godden, which I've not read any Rumer Godden yet, but I know Dia just recently read this and loved it. It is a little bit of a chunker, although the print's kind of big for a classic, so I don't know. I know it has to do with nuns, and that's all I know about it. For J, Justin Morgan Had a Horse by Marguerite Henry. I actually haven't read this. I've read all the Misty books. I've read Bridie, which is about the mule in the Grand Canyon, but I have a box set. Well, actually, it's Claire's of all of Marguerite Henry's books, and this is one of the ones I haven't read yet. 4K, fittingly, The Kentuckians by Giles? Who's it by? Janice Holt Giles? or Giles. I don't know how you pronounce that. This was actually my husband's grandmother's book, and I haven't read it yet. I just got it. Well, I was gonna say I just got it. I guess it's been a year that I've had it, but I wanted it because the title was The Kentuckians, and we currently live in Kentucky. For Elle, it's a book I've really wanted to read, and that's The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I don't know, like the idea of the person who wrote Sherlock Holmes writing a dinosaur story in the Victorian time period just sounds so fun. M was easy, Mansfield Park by Miss Jane Austen herself. We're going to go fantasy for N. I have a stack of fantasy books still in here from when I filmed my fantasy authors I want to read. Most of my fantasy, sci-fi, and historical fiction are actually in the other room. The library is pretty much entirely classics in middle grade, but The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And as I just implied, I've not read this, but I really want to because I've heard that the prose is really lovely, and I feel like he's one of those fantasy authors. If you say you're a fantasy fan, you should have read Rothfuss. And so I need to get on that. For O, we're going to do a book that is actually for my May TBR, and that's One of Ours by Willa Cather. This is her Pulitzer Prize winner that I think takes place during World War I. So yeah, this is one that I'm excited to pick up very soon. P, Passing by Nella Larson. This is a fantastic little novella about like racism and colorism, and the ending was not something I expected at all. Okay, for Q, I think this is as good as we're gonna get. It doesn't just have a Q in the title, but one of the words does start with Q. Don Quixote, which I have tried to read. I've gotten halfway through it and then ditched it in the hopes of coming back to it. So someday, I will conquer this book, but it felt like I was tilting at windmills to read it when I was trying to. We have a Daphne du Maurier for our, that's such a terrible cover, Rule Britannia. And actually part of her face got taken off when I took the sticker off. I don't think that really, oh, actually the picture's on the back, so you can see it right there. Isn't he just handsome? How dreamy is that picture? I don't even know what this is about. Set in the not-too-distant future on the raw, blustery English seacoast of Cornwall, Rule Britannia is the rousing saga of an indomitable woman who takes on the combined might of the British and American armed forces. Huh. That's interesting. I'm sure I picked this up at McKay's because it was like super cheap when like their cheap paperbacks section, and it was du Maurier. So I think I probably picked it up and paid less than $1 for it. For S, we're going to go with The Silmarillion by Tolkien, which I've not read. I tried to read it in high school, but it was just kind of too dry and slow for me, despite the fact that I had read Lord of the Rings probably at least half a dozen times by the time I tried this one. So I am going to be reading it this summer, though. I'm really looking forward to it, and I will be committed. I'm definitely going to finish it. In case you were wondering, this is really exhibiting books that maybe I don't talk about on my channel a lot, and books that I need to read but haven't. So it's just further illustrating why I'm focusing on reading my bookshelf this year, and I really should probably have more of these on my list. Tom Sawyer Abroad. So you may have heard of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. You may have read it. I have. But did you know that there was a story where a simple day trip turns into terror when Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, and Jim are kidnapped by the crazed inventors of an experimental airship who flies off with his captives in a midnight storm, leaving the boys trapped miles in the air in the mid-Atlantic? For you, we're going Under the Greenwood Tree by Thomas Hardy. Have read this one. Love this little edition. I think it's so pretty. I got it from Half Price Books like a while ago, and it's just so old and lovely. This was not my favorite Thomas Hardy. It's not at the very bottom of the stack, but it's closer to the bottom of the stack. However, if you're looking for a Thomas Hardy that's not sad, this one's not sad. I was thinking V was one I was going to have to fudge on, but I have Villette. I can't believe I forgot I have Villette. Have not read this. In fact, out of all the Brontes that I've read since I started my booktube channel, Charlotte has not been one I've picked up. I've read 2 Annes and I've reread Wuthering Heights, but I haven't even reread like Jane Eyre, much less picked up Villette or Shirley or, is there another one like The Professor or something? I think this is the only other Charlotte that I own other than Jane Eyre though. I could have gone the easy route and done Wuthering Heights because it's right underneath Villette, but I decided to go with a different type of author. We the Living by Ayn Rand. Haven't read any Ayn Rand. I actually have 4 of her books. So it's surprising I haven't picked one of them up yet, but I am interested because I know that at least some of her books kind of have that dystopian feel, some kind of interesting philosophical worldview type questions. And when I got them at a used bookstore, all 4 of them were 90 cents or less. And so I figured it was like no harm to give it a try. So this is one of 4 that I own. We are big time cheating for X. I don't have any authors that start with X. What words start with X? I was trying to think if there are any books that started with like example or exchange, and I can't see anything, but this did stick out to me because there is an X at the end of The Tale of Despero by Kate DiCamillo, which I love. This is my favorite, I think, Kate DiCamillo. It's just really sweet and fun. I thought Y wasn't going to be that hard, but it is. The only title I could find that has a word that starts with Y is A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which I have read and did for the most part enjoy, though it dragged in parts. But I do have an author whose last name starts with Y, and that is Eugene Yelchin. This book is fantastic. I love this book so much. About a young boy who's been kind of brainwashed under the Stalin regime, and it has really, really like great illustrations in it as well, because Yelchin is an artist as well as being an author, and so there's really fantastic artwork in it as well. And for Z, I knew I was going to be cheating. I knew when I started this with the caveat of having an author's last name, I'm like, it's going to be for Z, because I already knew that I had a couple of Zola books. So this one I've had for forever, The Belly of Paris, and then I also have The Beast Within. And I know that he's written a series. I don't know. I feel like this one is part of the series. I don't know if this one is. I don't know if everything he wrote was part of his series. I don't think so. So either way, I haven't yet delved into Zola. That's kind of missing in my French repertoire, but I do have these to dive into at some point. As I was putting those back, I saw I actually have this as well. I remembered the first name being Yevgeny, but I didn't realize his last name started with a Z as well. So I guess I have a couple of Z authors on my shelf. Anyways, thank you for playing with this with me. It was pretty fun. I think that some letters were more difficult than I anticipated. I really only thought I was going to have a hard time with like Z and X and Q and nothing else. And there were a few letters that took me a while to find something for them, which was kind of surprising. Again, most of these ended up being classics, and I could have easily probably gone into the other room and checked out some other books, but I don't think that any of those would have had the ones that I ended up going with an author's name anyway. I can't think of any books that I own that start with a Q or Y or Z. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.